The sea is a black mirror, shattered by the silhouettes of 5,000 ships, hulking behemoths of steel and salt, their bows slicing the swell like obsidian knives. Operation Overlord breathes in the briny night, a leviathan lunging toward Normandy's jagged jaw. Dawn's first bruise bleeds purple on the horizon, but the air hums with the low growl of engines, the clank of chains, the murmur of men who know this crossing is no mere voyage. It's a vow etched in wake foam. High above, the sky is a cathedral of contrails, Allied bombers droning like ancestral spirits, their payloads already pummeling the French coast into submission. Below, landing craft assault LCAs bob like corked prayers, each one a wooden womb crammed with the suns of a fractured world. Waves slap the hulls with wet warnings, carrying the faint tang of diesel and desperation. It's 0430 hours. An hour looms, a heartbeat away. The air inside is thick as chowder, sweat-soaked wool, unwashed fear, the metallic bite of oiled garons stacked like fallen totem poles. 40 men of the Big Red One huddle in the gloom, their faces ghosts in the red glow of a single bulb swinging like a hanged man's lantern. The 1st Infantry Division, battle-hardened from North Africa and Sicily, wears its scarlet insignia like war paint, a defiant streak across olive-drab shoulders. But tonight, even the veterans' eyes dart like minnows in a bait bucket. At the bow, knees drawn to his chest, sits PFC Charles Norman Shay. 19 years old, 6 feet of lean sinew, wrapped in fatigues that hang loose on his frame. His skin, the warm mahogany of Maine's river clay, gleams faintly under the bulb. Beneath the collar, hidden from prying sergeants, a faint tattoo coils, a Penobscot thunderbird, inked in secret during boot leave, its wings a whisper of wings from Indian Island, home. That spit of land in the Penobscot River, where birch canoes cradle the current and elders' voices weave stories of Gliskov the Creator, who tamed the waters with cunning and calm. They call this the Big Red One, Charles thinks, fingers tracing the morphine syringe in his pocket. A glass ampule of milky mercy, alien to the sweetgrass poultices his grandmother pressed into his palms. But it's just another circle. Drafted in '43, shipped from Old Town to Camp Blanding, Florida, where the sand stuck like accusations, and the drill instructor sneered at Indian time. Trained as a medic, they said. You'll fix what's broke, Shay. But healing ain't fixing. It's listening to the wound's psalm. He glances at the man beside him. Bavedzor Tommy Hank Zaleski, a Polish kid from Chicago's meatpacking district, all freckles and fidget, clutching a rosary like it's his last supper. Hank's the one who dubbed Charles Chief on the Atlantic crossing, half joke, half awe, after Charles shared a smoke and a story of salmon runs that could silver the stars. Across the aisle, ladder Ed Ryan, the platoon leader, a lanky Bostonian with a jaw like a bayonet, pores over a soggy map by flashlight. His eyes are steel, but his knuckles whiten on the paper's edge. LT Ryan, voice low, steady as a sextant. Listen up. Easy red sector, Omaha Beach. We hit at 6:30, first wave. Bunkers up top, WN62. They call 'em. Got 88s and MG42s that'll chew us like tobacco, but we punch through. Veerville draws our exit. Big Red One don't stop for storms. Murmurs ripple like pebbles in a stream. A corporal from Alabama spits tobacco juice into a helmet liner. Storms, hell, Lieutenant, this whole damn ocean's a squall. Laughter, brittle as salt rime, cracks the tension. But Charles feels it, the undercurrent, the pull of what lies beyond the ramp. Back home, the elders spoke of Atwaken, the great flood that reshaped the world. Is this our Atwaken, or just another white man's wave crashing on red shores? The LCA lurches, a rogue swell slamming starboard, vomit arcs in the dim, splattering boots. Charles presses his palm to the hull, feeling the wood's grain like a drumbeat. His medicine bundle, smuggled in a sock, a twist of sage and cedar from his mother's hands, rests against his thigh. No prayers allowed. The army frowns on pagan rites. But in his mind, the words rise, Ketahunto. Creator, guide these waters. Let them part for the weary. From the command ship USS Ancon, the armada unfurls like a vast deerskin map, 156,000 souls bound for 5 Normandy beaches. Utah, Omaha, Gold, Juno, Sword, code names that cloak the carnage to come. But Omaha is the ogre, its cliffs a gauntlet of concrete and wire, manned by the 352nd Infantry Division, fresh Wehrmacht wolves with teeth of tungsten. Naval guns offshore, HMS Warspite, USS Texas, thunder preliminary barrages, shells arcing like fiery arrows, stitching the bluffs in smoke and scream. yet the pre-dawn mist clings stubborn, veiling the shore, turning precision into prayer. In LCA 1147, the coxswain's voice booms over the intercom. 10 minutes to beach, lock and load. Rifles clatter, bayonets snick home. Charles slings his aid kit, bandages, sulfa powder, the sirets. Across his chest, its weight a talisman. Hank crosses himself, mutters a Hail Mary. Lieutenant Ryan stands, duck-footed against the roll, and claps Charles on the shoulder. "LT Ryan, you're our glue, Doc. If we bleed, you bind. No heroics, just get us walking." Charles nods, his dark eyes steady as river stones. "Understood, sir. Just keep the path clear." A ghost of a smile. Hank catches it, nudges him. "Chief's got the spirits on speed dial. We'll be sipping Calvados by noon." The laughter dies as the first glimmers of false dawn gild the waves. Charles closes his eyes, inhales the channel's chill. Iodine and iron, the breath of drowned fishermen. Grandmother said the sea remembers. Every paddle stroke, every lost canoe. Today, it will remember us. The bundle warms against his skin, sage whispering of resilience, of Penobscot warriors who faced English lead at Old Town Point in 1759, muskets cracking like thunderbirds. Drafted or not, Charles volunteered in his heart, for the island, for the treaties broken like birch bark, for a sovereignty stitched in silence. The LCAs surge forward in V formation, a feathered arrow aimed at Easy Red. Hedgehogs, steel tetrahedrals laced with mines, lurk subsurface like sunken teeth. From the lead boats, rangers scale Point du Hoc, but here, on Omaha's bloodied maw, it's the dog faces dance. Air bursts bloom overhead, flak shredding the sky into confetti of fire. A dud whistles past, burrowing sandward with a wet thump. Inside the LCA, the world tilts to frenzy. Seasickness yields to stark sobriety. Men grip rails, faces green as Normandy grass. Charles's stomach knots, not from the roll, but the rhythm, an ancestral drumbeat in the waves, calling him to the edge. The tide is teacher, his father once carved on a paddle. It gives, it takes, it tests the timber of your soul. Coxswain, 5 mics, doors and 30. The boat grinds bottom, sand and shingle screeching under the keel. Engines whine in reverse, but momentum shoves them shoreward. Through the scuttle, Charles glimpses hell's prelude. Smoke veils the beach, punctured by muzzle flashes from the bluffs. Bodies bob in the breakers, dark shapes snagged on obstacles, life jackets blooming like blood orchids. A Higgins boat nearby erupts in orange fury, men spilling into the surf like spilled beans. Latter Ryan draws his Colt, voice a blade. "On my mark, out and low, flank the hedgehogs." Hank's rosary snaps, beads scattering like buckshot. Charles palms a siret, thumb on the needle. "First wound's always the hardest. Yours or theirs. Don't matter. The ramp creaks, the world holds breath. Chaos uncoils like a kraken's ink. The doors grind open, and the channel vomits its cargo into the maw. Bullets rake the water. MG-42s stitching the sea with lead lace, 88mm shells geysering gouts of foam and flesh. Men leap, splash, scream. The surf is chest-deep crimson, waves laced with diesel rainbows and the debris of the damned. Helmets bobbing like buoys, a severed hand clutching a ration tin. Charles hits the water last, aid kit buoyant on his back, boots sucking into the sandy sludge. Cold sears like a fresh scar, Atlantic chill knifing through fatigues, brine invading nostrils with the copper reek of blood. "Move," he wills, like the river at spring thaw. A wave rears, slamming him sideways. He rights, tasting salt and screams. Ahead, Piotr Zaleski stumbles, around clipping his pack. "Chief, cover!" Charles lunges, hauling Hank upright, their hands locking in the undertow. Lieutenant Ryan's platoon scatters, some clawing for the shingle, others crumpling into the drink. From the bluffs, WN-62's bunkers belch defiance. Concrete casemates vomiting fire, their embrasures eyes of the underworld. The tide rushes in, eager accomplice, swelling to waists, then armpits. It claims the first casualties, GIs snared in wire, drowning in their own flak jackets. Charles spots one, a kid from Ohio, face down, limbs flailing like a capsized canoe. Without thought, he dives, morphine pouch tugging at his belt. The current fights, a living foe, but his arms, honed on salmon nets and wood splitter swings, encircle the man's chest. He drags, kicks, surfaces with the soldier gasping, water sheeting from his helmet. "Breathe, brother. The river don't keep what it can't carry." The man coughs, eyes wild saucers. "Thanks, Doc. Thought that was it." But the pouch, gone. Snatched by a sly swell, its cigarettes tumbling into the abyss. Charles feels the phantom weight, a hollowness deeper than hunger. No morphine. Just hands. Just will. Bullets zip past, one furrowing sand inches from his boot. He shoves the man toward a stranded LCA, turns back to the maelstrom. The beach is a slaughter pen. 2,400 souls will mark this morning with their absence. But in the moment, it's personal, a private apocalypse of spray and shrapnel. Charles wades deeper. The surf's roar a Penobscot dirge, waves curling like question marks over the fallen. This is no flood of creation. This is the deluge of forgetting. They drop the ramp into red. They didn't know the tide would test their traditions. The channel's churn has become a cauldron, breakers boiling with the froth of fury and the flotsam of the frayed. Bullets don't just whistle. They hiss, skipping off wave crests like venomous vipers, turning the tide to a toxic tea of tracers and torn life vests. The air is a slap of brine and cordite, sharp as shattered shells underfoot, the distant crump of offshore guns a thunder rolling in the ribs. PFC Charles Shay wades waist deep, the water a living shroud, heavy with the weight of what it claims. A boot here, a bayonet there, a brother's blank stare bobbing face up like a forgotten offering. The ramp's echo lingers, a metallic clang swallowed by the roar. But Charles moves with the deliberateness of a river guide, boots plowing the pebbled sump, each step a negotiation with the sand's sly suck. His aid kit sloshes, half-flooded now, sulfa packets bloating like drowned bees. The morphine pouch's absence gnaws, a ghost bite at his hip, but he pushes it down like swallowing the bile of boot camp barbs. "Chief, you gonna dance the war away?" No. This dance is for the living. Ahead the shingle looms, a crescent scar of storm-tossed pebbles, pocked with craters from naval shells that fell short, their lips rimmed with wire and the wilted weeds of war. Bodies litter the littoral. Some twitch in the shallows, clutching guts like spilled purses. Others lie still, surf lapping their cheeks in indifferent applause. From the bluffs, WN-62's maw gapes wider, and MG-42's burt raking the waterline, mowing men like wheat in a gale. A platoon from the 116th Infantry crumples nearby, their LCA a pyre of splintered pine, flames licking the low sky. Charles spots the first call, a shape snagged on a Czech hedgehog, steel arms embracing a GI's torso like a rusted lover. The man, a corporal from Tennessee, thrashes weakly, his helmet askew, blood threading from a scalp gash into the foam. "Help, goddamn, stuck!" The voice is a rasp, half drowned by the din. No time for assessment. The tide's rising, a relentless recruit marching to reclaim the beach. Charles lunges, waves parting grudgingly around his thighs. He grips the hedgehog's barnacled bar, yanks. Mine wire snicks taut but holds. The corporal's eyes lock on his, wild with the white of surrender. Not today, Charles thinks, the Thunderbird tattoo itching like a summons. He wedges a boot against the obstacle, levers with all the pull of hauling birch logs back home, the metal groaning like a wounded beast. The GI spills free, collapsing into Charles's arms, water sheeting from his pack. "Easy, brother. Let the current carry the pain." Charles hauls him shoreward, one arm under the man's pits, the other sweeping flotsam, a floating M1, a sodden K-ration, out of their path. Bullets plink off the hedgehog behind them, close enough to scent the hot lead. The corporal coughs brine, clutching Charles's sleeve. You're the Indian, right, Chief? Thought you was myth." Charles grunts, a half-smile lost in the spray. "Myths bleed too. Hold still." He tears open a sulfa packet with his teeth, the powder dusting white on the gash like talcum on a fevered brow. No stitches here, just pressure, prayer, the press of palm to pulse. The man's breathing steadies, ragged to rhythmic, as if the touch alone staunches the seep. Healing's in the hold. Grandmother's voice echoes, her hands calloused from weaving quills into baskets that held the river's secrets. Not the herb, the heart. They stumble onto the shingle's skirt, pebbles skittering like startled minnows. Charles props the corporal against a bullet-riddled LCVP hull, scanning the haze. Smoke veils the viands. Vierville draw a shadowed slot in the cliffs, 300 yards yonder, but it might as well be miles, with enfilade fire stitching the sand. Lieutenant Ryan's platoon has coalesced in fits, a dozen men hunkered behind a wrecked dozer, trading potshots with the bluffs. Hank Zaleski waves frantically from the cluster, his freckles lost in soot, a graze furrowing his forearm like a botched tattoo. Hank, hollering over the wump of mortars, "Chief, over here! Rise hit bad. Legs hamburger." Charles nods, the call a current pulling him back into the drink. He glances at the corporal. "Stay low, mend your own drift." and plunges seaward again, the surf welcoming with a slap that stings like segregation's sidelong stares. Back in training, at the medic's tent in Blanding, they'd segregated the savages. Native draftees like him bunked with the dust bowlers, their herbal whispers dismissed as superstition. But who mended the morphine runs when the trucks bogged? Us. With what the land gave. The water deepens to armpits, a chill vice clamping his ribs. A wave rears, green glass crested white, and crashes, tumbling him into the murk. He surfaces sputtering, tasting the channel's copper kiss, eyes stinging from diesel's scum. Through the froth he spies Ryan. The lieutenant floats face up, jacket buoyant, a chunk of shrapnel from an 88mm blooming red in his thigh. The wound pulses with each swell, a dark flower unfurling. Ryan's map floats nearby, ink bleeding like war-zone tears. Charles swims, stroke over stroke, the aid kit dragging like an anchor. A sniper's crack splits the air, zip, the round furrowing water inches from his ear. He doesn't flinch, the Penobscot in him knows the snap of hidden bows, the patience of the ambush. He reaches Ryan, flips him prone, towing by the collar through the suck. "Sir, on me, kick if you can." Ryan's eyes flutter, pain-glazed. "Shay, the platoon's scattered. Get the others, not me." But his voice cracks, the Boston bark softened by the brine. "Platoon needs its head, sir, and heads need hands." Charles hooks an arm under Ryan's, freestyle hauling against the tide's treason. The lieutenant's weight is dead wood heavy, but Charles channels the river's run, steady, unyielding, the way he'd netted sturgeon at Indian Island, their silver flanks thrashing till calm. They breach the shallows, pebbles grinding knees, and collapse behind the dozer's treads. Hank's there, tourniquet half-tied on his own arm, fumbling bandages with blood-slick fingers. "Hank, gimme that kit, Chief." Rye's losing too much, looks like raspberry jam. Charles bats the hands away gently, unpacking what remains. Field dressings sodden but serviceable, a compress for the femoral gusher. He cinches the tourniquet above the wound, twist, knot, hold. The lieutenant hissing through clenched teeth. "Breathe through it, sir, like wind in the pines." The words slip out unintended, a fragment of elder chant. Ryan's brow furrows, but he nods, the pain ebbing to a throb under the bind. Around them, the brothers bind tighter. Dean Ellis, a black sharecropper's son from Mississippi, crawls up, his bar smoking, a ricochet crease across his shoulder. "Doc, that preacher from the boat, he's down yonder, praying to beat hell." Charles marks it, the tally ticking in his mind. 1 corporal, 1 lieutenant, now this. The big red one's battered but unbowed. Polish fire in Hank's eyes, Irish grit in Ryan's grip, and in Ellis, the quiet steel of fields furrowed under Jim Crow's yoke. They look to Charles not as chief, but as anchor, their blind faith a bridge over the bloodied breakers. They see the healer, not the heritage, he reflects, packing Ellis's wound with sulfa-dusted gauze, the powder hissing faint as sage smoke. But the heritage sees them. No hierarchies in the haze. A lull descends, brief as a breath between waves. The MG-42 quiets for a reload, offshore guns whoomp a counter-barrage, shells arcing like ancestral arrows to crater the cliffs. The men huddle, sharing drags from a crumpled Lucky Strike, the tobaccos bite a balm against the brine. Ryan, through gritted teeth, propping on elbow. "Shay, you pull that off like it's nothing. What's your secret? Voodoo?" Hank chuckles, wincing. "Nah, Lieutenant. It's that bundle he smuggles. Calls the fish, calms the fire." Charles ties off the last knot, meets their gazes, eyes like stars pricked from the smoke. No secrets, just the water teaches. It don't choose who it carries. He doesn't speak of the medicine bundle, still dry in his breast pocket, its cedar scent a secret shore. But in that moment, as a wave sighs spent against the shingle, the bonds forge, not in blood but in the blind trust of hands that hold. The tide creeps higher, licking at the dozer's belly, whispering of more to claim. Charles stands, scanning the haze, shapes stirring in the surf, calls cutting the cordite fog. "More out there. Hold here." He steps back into the swell, the water closing like a kinsman's clasp. But as he dives for the next, a sergeant tangled in his own entrails, the realization swells. These brothers, battered by the same breakers, see no color in the current, only the man who hauls them home. They thought the waves washed wounds, until they washed away the world. The beach has birthed a bedlam, a bastard child of steel and surf, where the channel's lap turns to a lash, waves whipping foam laced with crimson curlicues. The air thickens to a miasma, cordite's acrid cough mingling with the gut punch rot of ruptured bowels, the shrill keening of shrapnel slicing sky like a banshee's wail. Offshore, the Armada's big guns persist in their pounding liturgy, wump-wump shaking the sand like a medicine rattle gone mad. But the bluffs shrug off the blows, their grassy crowns scarred yet sentinel. WN-62's bunkers, those concrete colossi hunkered in the cliffs like ancient barrows, exhale death in measured malice. 88mm rounds whoosh skyward, air bursting in lethal lacework that peppers the shallows with jagged confetti. PFC Charles Shay crouches behind the dozer's husk, its treads caked in a slurry of sand and sanguine, the metal still warm from a glancing mortar kiss. His breath comes in measured pulls, fogging the chill like a ghost's sigh, hands slick with the residue of Lutter Ryan's bind, blood's tacky varnish drying to a map of Maine's rivers on his palms. The tide, that treacherous tide, has clawed higher now, a greedy gulf gnawing at the shingle's edge, swallowing crates of ammo and bandages whole, their wooden crates bobbing briefly before the undertow claims them like offerings to some submerged deity. The sea takes what it needs, Charles muses, eyes scanning the haze, but today it hungers for heroes. From the cluster of the big red ones battered, now a ragged ring of 12, helmets low as prayer beads, comes a low thrum of voices. The platoon knitting frayed nerves with fragments of home. Peter Hank Zaleski, his grays packed and pulsing, passes a canteen of brackish water, its rim beaded with condensation like sweat on a fevered brow. Tastes like piss-warm ale, but it'll do. Chief, you good? Look like you seen the devil's own polka. His freckles stand out stark against the grime, eyes darting to the surf where shapes still stir, half-seen specters in the smoke. Charles nods, wiping his hands on his trousers, the fabric stiffening to crust. Devil's got better rhythm, but yeah, good enough to keep hauling. He doesn't mention the hollow at his hip, the morphine's missing pinch a phantom limb, nor the way the bundle in his pocket hums faint, Cedar's calm, a counterpoint to the chaos. Around them, Potter Ellis reloads his bar with deliberate clicks, the brass casings glinting like salmon scales in the strengthening sun, a pale disk smudged by pyres on the tide line, where a Higgins boat burns lazy, its hull a funeral pyre for the fused. Lotter Ryan shifts, propping on his good leg, the tourniquet's knot, a purpled knot of necessity. His face is ashen under the stubble, but his voice cuts clear. Shay's right. We ain't done. Draw's still a football field off, machine guns got it pinned, but if we don't move, the Kraut'll have us for breakfast. He gestures vaguely bluffward, where the bunker's breath quickens. An MG-42's brrr rips the air anew, tracers arcing like fireflies drunk on diesel, stitching the water 50 yards out. A scream answers. High, human, the kind that hooks the gut. It's the preacher from the boat, Chaplain Ellis, no relation to Pfut Ellis, but fate's funny that way. A lanky Methodist from Ohio, his dog tags tangled with a silver cross now tarnished by brine. He floats belly up in the shallows, jacket buoyant but hold, a gut shot blooming dark as ink in a well. His lips move in silent supplication, hands clutching at nothing but foam. Charles sees him through a gap in the smoke, the tide tugging insistent, a slow drag toward deeper doom. Got one, Charles mutters, rising fluid as a heron from the reeds. The platoon tenses. Hank's hand twitches to his garand. Ellis whispers a word, but no protest. They've seen the healer's hands at work, felt the steadying press that turns terror to tether. Blind faith, Charles thinks, slinging his half-drowned kit higher, born in the breakers. Better than any bundle's blessing. He slips into the surf, the water a colder clasp now, rising to his chest with each swell, the pebbled bottom treacherous underfoot, sucking at ankles like river mud after rain. The barrage births anew. An 88mm crack from the bluff, the shells screaming overhead to detonate on the shingle behind, showering the dozer in shrapnel sleet that pings like hail on a tin roof. Charles dives flat, wave folding over him in a green shroud, ears ringing with the submerged roar. He surfaces, spitting salt, eyes burning from the acrid haze that drifts shoreward like a funeral fog. The chaplain thrashes weakly, 20 yards out, his calls lost to the gale. Charles strokes hard, arms scissoring the resistance, the current a conspirator pushing him wide. Like poling against the Penobscot's spring rage, he recalls, muscles coiling with the memory of upstream battles, paddle biting deep to claim the catch. A sniper's crack from a pillbox midway up the cliff furrows the wave beside him, spray misting his cheek like a warning spittle. He rolls, presents a narrower silhouette, keeps low as the tide's tumult allows. Reaching the chaplain, he finds the man heavier than sin, flak jacket sodden, limbs leaden with shock. "Father, on me. The Lord's got more sermons for you." Charles hooks under the arms, the cross digging into his palm like a thorn talisman. The chaplain's eyes, milky with pain, focus blearily. "Son," the flock scattered like chaff. His voice bubbles, blood-flecking lips, but Charles' toes relentless, kicking against the keel-sucking pull. The gear's greedy gulp claims another toll. As they near the shallows, the chaplain's pack snags a submerged tellermine's chain, yanking them both under in a frothy wrench. Charles surfaces choking, the chaplain limp now, face blue as winter ice on the island. He hauls harder, free hand clawing sand, pebbles grinding into knees as he drags the body ashore. Behind the dozer, the platoon makes room, Hank clearing debris with frantic sweeps, Ellis covering bluffward with his bars chugga-chugga. Charles lays the chaplain down, palms pressing the abdominal seep, sulfa powder scattering like sacrificial ash. But the wound's a chasm, intestines slick as eels, the pulse a fluttering moth under his fingers. "Stay with us, Father. Your words, they carried us across." The chaplain's hand finds his, weak as willow with squeezing once. "And yours, heal what words can't." Then a rattle, final faint as a reed flute's sigh, and the eyes glass over, staring at the smoke-veiled sky. Charles bows his head, brief as a breath, murmuring in Penobscot. "Nakawesk," guide his paddle to the other shore. The bundle warms against his chest, a quiet counter to the gun's gospel. The rescues rise relentless, a rhythm rising with the tide's threat. No sooner does he close the chaplain's eyes than another cry pierces. O'Malley, a wiry Irishman from Ryan's platoon, pinned by his own pack on a Belgian gate, the obstacle tilting under wave assault, threatening to capsize and crush. Charles is up again, the surf a familiar foe now, its brine-bitter bite blending with the metallic mist of blood spray from a nearby hit. He navigates the flotsam field, drifting rifles like broken arrows, a helmeted head lolling sightless, dodging a fresh barrage that births geysers 10 yards off, the concussion slamming him like a sturgeon's tail. O'Malley's face is a rictus, teeth bared in the waves wash. "Doc, it's twisting. Gonna snap my spine." Charles wedges in, prying the gate's tangle with raw leverage, muscles screaming like split birch. The tide gulps greedy, his last compressed packet slips free, tumbling into the abyss, joining the morphine in the deep. Supplies stolen, one by one he grits, hauling O'Malley clear, the man's yelp echoing the gull's gutted cries overhead. Back on the shingle, he binds what he can, belt as tourniquet, sock as sling, the platoon pitching in with whatever's scavenged, a shrapnel-shredded map for padding, a K-ration tin for splint. But the bunkers blister on, their breath a blistering birth of lead and thunder. An airburst pop overhead rains fragments, one slicing Hank's cheek, a red rivulet tracing jaw to collar. "Just a love tap," Hank spits, but his eyes betray the lie, flicking to Charles with that same blind reliance. Ellis fires a burst, brass arcing hot into the sand. "Bastards up there's laughin', time we shut the joke." Look to Ryan, pale but plodding, sketches egress in the dirt. "Flank left, use the smoke. Shay, you're with the wounded, keep 'em walking." Charles tallies in silence. Chaplain lost, O'Malley mending, a dozen more calls keening from the crimson current. The gear's gone to the Gulf, bandages bloated, sirets sunk, but the hands remain, calloused by tradition's touch. The elders said, "When the river rises, you become the bank." He dives again, for a sergeant snared in wire, the surf surging higher, a swelling salvation or sepulcher. Each plunge pulls peril closer, the tide's theft turning triage to trial, wounds washed but not withered. The surf that stole supplies was about to steal spirits unless staunched. The tide has turned tyrant, a swelling sovereign surging to reclaim the shore with indifferent insistence. Waves rearing higher now, cresting in frothy fangs that gnaw at the shingle's stubborn spine. The beach is a baptismal basin gone berserk, water waist-high and wild, churning with the detritus of doom. Shattered rifles like splintered ribs, ration cans rolling like orphaned skulls, and bodies, oh the bodies, bobbing in buoyant mockery, their life vests bloated balloons tethering souls to the surf's savage suck. The air hangs heavy, a humid hell of hemoglobin haze, the metallic mist of massacred mingling with the brine-bitter bite of breakers that slap and sting like scornful slaps. From the bluffs, WN-62's bunkers belch their blistering broadsides unabated. MG-42's burt in staccato sermons, 88mm shells whoosh crash birthing geysers that rain shrapnel like metallic monsoon. The Garan's guttural growl drowned in the din of distant detonations that rumble the ribs like ancestral thunder. PFC Charles Shay pauses at the dozer's shadow, chest heaving like bellows at a birch bark forge, the tally of the treated etching tallies in his mind's mud. 20, 30, a platoon plus, pulled from the peril, their gasps gratitude greater than gold. His fatigues cling like a second skin, sodden and stiffening with the salt of sweat and sea, the aid kit a hollow husk now, sulfa spent, dressings depleted, only the ghost of gauze and the grit of his grip remaining. The morphine's loss looms larger, a menacing void where mercy once nestled, turning each wound to a wager of will alone. Hands over herbs, he thinks, flexing fingers crusted crimson, palm to pulse, the old way in new waves. The medicine bundle, mercifully spared the Gulf's gulp, presses against his heart like a hidden heartbeat, its sage scent faint but fierce, a filament of the island threading through the inferno. The big red one's battered brotherhood huddles tighter, a human hedge against the havoc. Lad Orion, leg lashed and livid, barking orders through pain's pallor. Tutter Hank Zaleski, cheek stitched with hasty thread from a scavenged sewing kit, his rosary restrung with a bootlace. Pater Ellis, BR barking defiance at the bluffs, his shoulder swathed in sock sling. But the calls crescendo, cries carving the cordite fog, a chorus of the caught, "Doc! Over here!" From a sergeant snared in concertina, "Mother, it burns," from a boy barely bearded, bloating in the breakers. The tide's deluge demands more dives, each one a desperate dash into the desperate deep, the current's crimson crest a climax coiling. Charles locks eyes with Hank, the Polish kid's freckles faded to phantoms under the grime, a bond forged in the first frantic haul now fraying at the edges. "Chief, you can't keep this up, tides turn in teeth. Let me cover, you rest." Hank's voice cracks, not from fear but the fray, his hand hovering as if to anchor the healer who anchors them all. "Rest is for rivers at low water, Hank. You watch the flanks, I'll watch the flow." Charles claps his shoulder, the touch transmitting the Thunderbird's talisman, unseen but unfelt. He's more than brother now, blood of the bundle, white skin or no. He turns seaward, the surf summoning with a slosh that soaks his boots anew, pebbles skittering like startled spirits underfoot. A shrapnel's shrill whistle whips a wave nearby, the fragment thwacking water to spray that stings his neck like hornet's spite. He dives anyway, the plunge a prayer, body arrowing into the aqueous abyss. The water closes cool and clutching, a velvet vise veiling the violence above, bubbles trailing from his nostrils like silver smoke signals. Underwater, the world warps to womb-like weirdness. Muffled crumps vibrate the chest, fish-faint shadows dart through the debris cloud, a lost helmet tumbling slow as a leaf in autumn's eddy. He surfaces in the swell's saddle, gasping the gumbo of gas and gore, eyes scanning the scarlet sea. There, a cluster caught in the current's clutch, 5 GIs from the 18th Regiment, their LCA listing like a drunkard's dinghy, doors jammed on a mine's mangled maw. They flail in the froth, packs dragging them down like millstones, one already under, boots kicking futile as frog spawn. Charles strokes hard, arms windmilling against the whirl, the tide's treachery, tugging him sideways like a sly current at the island's bend. Bullets zip, zipper the surface, one grazing his packstrap with a sizz that singes wool. He reaches the first, a burly private from Brooklyn, choking on his own fear froth. "Grab hold, I've got you." He hooks the man's collar, toes with the torque of timber hauling. The GI's wait a welcome wallow after the wires wrestles. They breach the shallows together, the private collapsing knee-deep, vomiting brine and heaving hurls. Jesus, Doc, thought the fish were feastin'. Not yet. Fish wait for the weak need. Charles shoves him toward the shingle, turns back for the next, relentless returns, the rhythm rising like a river in rain. 4 more follow in frantic ferry. A corporal with a crushed collarbone, screaming syllables of surrender. A rifleman ricocheted by rubble, his thigh a ragged ribbon. 2 more tangled in their own towlines, faces fish belly pale. Each haul hacks at his reserves, lungs laboring like leaky bellows, but the revelation ripples. In the dive, divinity dawns, not in the divine's distant decree, but in the determine's depth, the healer's hands harmonizing havoc into haven. The tally swells, 50, 60, the 70 mark looming like a lighthouse in the lowering mist, as the sun shoulders higher, gilding the gore and gold that mocks the metals to come. Offshore, the armada adjusts its aim, shells shrieking shoreward in sharper salute, cratering the bluff's base where sappers now scramble, Bangalore torpedoes blasting breaches in the wire. But the bunkers bite back, an airburst popping overhead, fragments fizzing into the foam like fireflies felled. One clips Charles's calf mid-haul, a hot kiss that blooms blood in the brine, the pain a pinch phantom to the morphine's missing menace. He shakes it off, drags the rifleman Ryanward, the lieutenant's voice a beacon. "Shay, fall back. Smoke's shifting, we got a lane." The platoon stirs, a serpent uncoiling, low crawling toward the Veerville draws dimple, Ellis's bar suppressing the sniper's spite. But Charles hesitates, the crimson current calling one last, the tide's turmoil tallying toward 200. There, in the waves' wicked whirl, a familiar flail. For Tommy Hank Zaleski, no wait, not Hank but close, Joey Malone, the kid from Hank's bunk, the one who'd shared smokes and stories of Southie sisters on the Atlantic grind. Joey barely 20, eyes wide as the wakes they'd watched, now snared in undertow, a shrapnel shard jutting from his shoulder like a broken branch. "Joey, kick, find the bottom." Charles bellows, but the current conspires, a comber curling colossal to capsize the kid. He dives deeper this time, the deluge desperate, lungs burning as the green gloom greens his vision. His fingers fumble the flailing arm, lock, pull, up through the sucking silt, surfacing with Joey's gasp a geyser beside his own. "Gotcha, Malone." Breathe the fight back in. They claw shoreward, pebbles punishing palms, but Joey's breath bitters, bubbling wet, the shards seep turning froth to foam-flecked crimson. Charles hauls him beyond the high-water hash, lays him in a crater's cradle. The platoon circle closing like kin at a wake. Hank's there, face fracturing. "Joey?" "No, Chief, he's—" The words wither, Hank's rosary twisting in fists. Charles works frantic, fingers probing the puncture, packing with the last pinch of sulfa, a sock shred for staunch. But the breath bubbles bitterer, Joey's eyes locking on his, the light leaching like tide from a tidal pool. "Doc, tell Ma, I saw the stars, over the sea." A cough convulses, blood blooming on lips, the final exhale a sigh spent as summer wind. Charles holds him, palms pressing futile, the Thunderbird tattoo throbbing like a dirge. Not him. Not in my arms, like the elders falling to fever without their songs. The revelation rips raw. The tide doesn't just test traditions, it tempers them, forging the healer's heart in the furnace of farewell, each lost breath a brick in the bridge of the saved. Hank kneels, keening quiet. He was just a kid, like me. Ryan's hand finds Charles's shoulder, heavy as hemlock. "You gave him the dive, Shay. That's more than most." The platoon presses inland apace, the draws dimple drawing them, but Charles lingers, closing Joey's eyes with a thumb's tender trace, murmuring Nakawesk into the wind-whipped wave. The tally ticks to 80, 90, the 100 mark a milestone in the maelstrom, each return a revelation, the divine in the dive drawn from depths where determination dwells. The desperate deluge ebbs not, but Charles rises, calves cut, cauterized by will, plunging anew for the next in the crimson current's clutch. A sergeant sinking slow, a squad snagged in surf snare. The 200 looms, a tidal testament, the hands unyielding as the heritage that honed them. Bullets buzz by, waves wallop weary, but the return's relentless. Haul, bind, bless. In the dive's divine draw, prejudice's phantom fades. The natives nod no novelty, just necessity. Sovereignty's song sung in the surf zone symphony. It didn't drown the determined, it simply drew forth the divine in the dive. The tide's tyranny tempers at last, its crimson crest crestfallen, receding like a chastened cur to reveal the ravaged rim of the realm. A shingle strewn with the stigmata of survival. Sodden packs like beached whales, bandages blooming white against the bloodied brown, and the bodies blessedly fewer now, cradled in craters, as if the sand itself sought solace for the slain. The sun, that indifferent arbiter, shoulders fully into the sky, scattering the smoke's shroud in shafts that gild the gore, turning puddles to prisms of pink and puce. The air, once a asphyxiant stew of sulfur and salt, lightens to a lingering lament. The plink-plink of cooling casings on pebbles, the ragged rasp of breaths bartered from the breakers, the distant crump of the bluff's beleaguered bunkers, their belch now balked by the big red one's bulge inland. PFC Charles Shay stands at the draw's dimpled threshold, a notch in the Normandy cliff carved by centuries of rain and now rent by the rifle's riposte, his frame a silhouette etched in exhaustion. 6 feet of sinew slackened, fatigues flayed to rags that flap like prayer flags in the updraft. The tally tolls in his temples, 200 and change, souls snatched from the surf's sepulchral suck, their wounds washed but witnessed, bound by hands that held no hierarchy. The calf's cut throbs a tattoo, a twin to the thunderbird's hidden thrum, but pain is passenger now, hitched to the heritage that hauled him hence. The river always returns to source, he reflects, gazing bluffward where sappers scramble, their satchel charges booming breaches in the wire's wicked weave. But this shore, it's reshaped us all. The platoon's insistent inroad inches onward, a serpentine surge of the steadfast. Lytton Ryan, hobbling on a makeshift crutch of garand and grit, his tourniquet traded for a hasty truss barking bearings to the battered band. Push the draw, flank those pillboxes, dock, triage the trail, keep the line limber. His Boston bite is blunted by the brine, but the steel endures, eyes etching the egress like a mapmaker mending fate. Peanhunter Hank Zaleski trails close, Joey Malone's dog tags draped round his neck like a novena's noose, his rosary's beads blood-flecked but clutched constant. Chief, you pulled the miracle. 200? That's biblical. Hank's voice veils the void of loss, freckles furrowed in the fierce light, but his slap on Charles's back lands solid, a sacrament of the saved. Pito Ellis brings rear, bar slung low, his shoulders swaddle sweat-soaked but steady. Ain't no color in the count, Doc. You saw us equal, that's the win. The words hang heavy, a quiet quake against the segregation's subtle sting back stateside, where natives and Negroes bunked bunk beds in boot camp's backlots. Charles nods, the bundle's cedar a concealed communion. Equality's in the eddy, Ellis, the current don't care for creeds. They press on, the draws defile a defiled corridor of churned chalk and chitinous wire, sniper snaps cracking from crevices, but falling short in the smoke's shifting scrim. Offshore, the Armada's anthems abate to applause, destroyers nosing nearer to lob liberty at the last layers. By noon the bulge breaks through. Vierville's village a vista of thatch roofs rutted by retreat, Wehrmacht ghosts in gray gabardine scattering like startled starlings. The big red one beds in, foxholes furrowed in the firs, the medevac jeeps jouncing the jeep trails with the wounded's wail. Charles collapses in a copse's crook, aid kit, and empty echo, hands hovering over hurts that hum with half-healed hurt. A private's punctured lung, bubbling like Joey's last. A sergeant's shattered shin splintered as the surf's stolen sirets. No morphine, but memory mends, he murmurs, pressing palms to pulses, the Penobscot pulse persisting in the press. The elder's echoes envelop. Healing's no haste, it's the hold that harbors hope. V-Day dawns in rhymes rubble, May 8, 1945. A cessation that sings like spring thaw on the island, church bells bonging over the Rhine's reluctant ripple. Charles stands in a square scoured of swastikas, the bundle unrolled at last in a quiet quarter, sage smoke to summon the spirits. Ketahunto, the circle closes, but the current carries on. Hank finds him there, uniform unbuttoned, a bottle of liberated cognac in hand. To the surf, chief, and the souls we salvaged. They clink canteens, the liquor a liquid liturgy, washing the war's weight if not the waves' whisper. Joey's tags glint on Hank's chest, a muted murmur of the metals to come. The ceremony is crisp as creased khaki, brass buttons gleaming under chandeliers that chime like distant detonations. Charles, promoted to corporal in the churn, stands ramrod in rows of the redeemed, the silver star pinned to his pocket by Gen. Clarence Hubner himself, the big red one's grizzled patriarch. For gallantry in action, the general intones, voice of velvet vice, PFC, now Corporal Charles Shay, who braved the breakers to rescue over 200 men from drowning's grasp. The auditorium applauds, a thunder tempered, but Charles feels the phantom pull of the pouch, the tide's theft a truer testament. Medals mark the moment. Hands hold the memory. Hank, beside him in civvies now, whispers wet-eyed, "You earned it, brother." For Joey, for all. Letta Ryan, leg lingering lame, clasps his arm post-pinning. "Shay, you didn't just save skins. You saved the soul of the one." The words warm like wood smoke, but Charles demurs, soft-spoken as the island's inlet. Just did what the water willed, sir. No more. The humility hums, a homage to the buddies buried in the bluffs, their graves gravely mounds under white crosses that catch the Chesapeake's chill. The call comes crueler, the Cold War's clarion yanking Charles back to the breach. Now Sergeant Shay, the Penobscot, pulled from paper mills in Old Town to the Puzon perimeter's peril. The surf swaps for snow-slick slopes, Omaha's breakers for the Imjin River's icy ire, but the hands endure. Triage in frozen foxholes, hauling the hypothermic from the hills, morphine mercifully meted this time. Chosen's reservoir claims comrades in crystalline clutches, but Charles channels the channel, diving into drifts as deep as the draw. War's waves wear different faces, he reflects, binding a marine's mangled mittens, but the healing's the same hold. Korea carves new creases in his calm, the silver stars sparkle dimmed by the Distinguished Service Cross's darker gleam, but he returns resolute, the bundle battle-worn but unbroken. Decades dissolve like mist at morn. The channels churn a constant companion as Charles, now silvered and sage at 83, nests native in Normandy's Nestle. The Legion of Honor drapes his shoulders in a Vierville villa, France's fleur-de-lis, a fragile foil to the Thunderbird's fierce flight. French villagers flock, faces furrowed with the family's famine, offering calvados and confessions. Monsieur Shay, you pulled my father from the foam. Their eyes echo the ebb, gratitude a garland of generations. Alex Kershaw, the historian's quill, captures the quiet in interviews inked for eternity. The last Omaha medic, his humility a horizon. Charles walks the sands soft-shod, the shingle smoothed by 60 summers, pebbles polished as prayers. The waves took much, he tells a circle of schoolchildren, their cheeks cherub-browned under berets, but they gave more. Brothers bound by the breakers. Hank's son stands sentinel, Joey's tags a talisman past, his voice velveted by years. Dad said you were the tide's own son, Uncle Charles. The words well up, a wave within. As Charles traces the surf's sigh, the bundle's ash scattered long since, but its spirit surging still. The centenary crests on the calends of June 2024. Charles, 100 winters weathered, a Penobscot patriarch perched on a dune's declivity. The big red one's remnants rallied round like roots reuniting. The Charles Shay Memorial mounds meditative nearby, a stone sentinel sculpted simple, engraved with the surf's surge. Healer of the waves, guardian of the grateful. Dignitaries drone dedications, but Charles quiets them with a raised palm, voice a river's ripple. No speeches. Just remember the hands and the hold. He toasts with trembling fingers, calvados catching the channel's gleam, eyes etching the horizon where the first wave fell. Hank's grandson kneels, placing a salmon scale polished smooth at the stone's base. For the island, Grandpa Shay, for the promise pulled forth. Charles nods. The Thunderbird tattoo faded to a faint flourish under translucent skin, but the heritage hums heroic. The rescues didn't just save soldiers, they saved sovereignty's song, he thinks, the moral murmuring like elders' evensong. He healed what hatred harrowed and harmonized two hemispheres. Endurance doesn't always emerge armed, sometimes it arrives unarmed, yet unyielding. In war, the truest triage isn't the tourniquet, it's the tide that ties us together. The sun sets scarlet, the surf a soft susurrus, washing the wounds of worlds away. Charles rises, leaning on a cane carved from Maine maple, the inroad inward now, to the native nest where the current calls home. The legacy's lullaby lingers, a slow, swelling salvage of the sovereign soul. They thought the beach buried braves, but one Penobscot pulled forth the promise. If you believe ancestral waves outlast wars, subscribe for more untold World War II surges of the sovereign soul.